Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Red Hour, a show I do twice a week. I try to do it twice a week. This month has been rough, and I haven't been able to do it twice a week, but normally I do twice a week, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time if you're new, and where I throw a little chaos into Star Trek by reviewing a random episode. And today's episode is Enterprise Season 3, Episode 1, The Xindi. So, I'm pretty sure that I've done a review of this episode before. I'm 99%, 0.99999% sure because I distinctly remember talking through all the points and all the notes that I made for this episode. These aren't the same notes that I had last time because I just throw those away. And it looks like Gavin Blackburn is here. Hello, Gavin Blackburn. So I'm pretty sure I've done this episode before, but I looked through my playlist. That the playlist is the Red Hour, by the way, if you're looking for it. And what's up, DJ Play Nice? And I couldn't find this episode anywhere in my playlist. So I looked in under live and couldn't find this episode anywhere under live. So I looked at some of the other playlists that's on my channel. Couldn't find it. Maybe I mistakenly put it there. Could not find it there either. So I looked into my favorites, which is privately listed, and could not find it there. I know that I reviewed this episode. I know for a fact that I did because I wrote notes. I wrote a lot of the same notes that I wrote this time. I wrote it. So basically, this is a do over episode that I'm doing for the second time. And this time we're going to make sure that it's recorded in my little book that I use to keep. I use to keep up with what episodes that I've done and haven't done. And we're going to make sure and put it in the proper playlist because I do not want to have to review this episode a third time. Okay, moving on. Let's see what DJ Playness is saying real quick. Live only happens once. Take advantage. Yes, I don't know. I don't know what happened. I maybe I accidentally deleted it. But anyway, we're here. We're here and we're gonna do it. So we'll do it live. Fuck it. We're gonna do it again, and then we're gonna move on and never review this episode again. Hopefully. So it starts off with a recap of um, the Xindi attack and Trip's sister getting killed during the attack, and he treats it as if it's just like anybody else. He doesn't take special treatment or whatever. And of course, this is Star Trek's response to 9/11, and our good friend Admiral Teague does not particularly care for the Xindi arc because he's a New Yorker and was there that day. I don't know where he was particularly, but I can understand. I didn't like the Xindi arc for other reasons. I'm starting to, as I revisit it from time to time through this show, I'm starting to appreciate it a little more. Um, in this episode, I'm going to talk at the end the things that I liked about it, and of course things that I don't like. And I'm not going to go on a Starfleet Academy uh, rant. The show just gets dumber and unbearable each episode. Like each episode is like worse than the previous one. Uh, and this one was boring and dumb, and the the somewhat attractive girl, white girl, not the Betazoid one, the other one, breaks into the bridge of the Athena. I can't believe I even remembered the name of the ship, and um, is able to take command with the help of the master hacker Caleb. Is able to take command of the ship somehow without using command codes or any authorization codes and stuff like that. And it looks like Michelle Fairy Tales is here. Hello, Michelle Fairy Tales. And just basic stuff like that, which um, I guess they don't know how things work in the Star Trek lore and universe. Um, I think we already knew that, but this is more evidence of that. And what else happens? They beam Sam off the ship. For those who don't know, Sam is a holographic being like the Doctor. So you would not beam them off of the ship. You would just transport them from location. Like the Doctor with his mobile emitter can just go from place to place. And I don't think, and I've reviewed a lot of episodes of Voyager, I don't think there's any time where we see him beamed somewhere. Uh, I could be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. And one other small, uh, another kind of gripe is I called it Bully and Gaden's gay adventure, and it was just really kind of stupid, and they sort of rip off a mock time. I know I should be talking about this episode in but gotta get it out. I gotta get it out, and then I don't. I'm done. And then there's not. Oh, and their punishment for breaking into the bridge of the Athena is probation and community service, which Caleb was already on probation as it was. So shouldn't he be like expelled from the school? And really, she should too. But there's hardly any consequences for people's actions unless you're a white male, heterosexual male, I guess. Anyway, enough about that. That's the weekly Starfleet Academy rant. So it starts off with where we see the Xindi Council. At this point, we don't know that it's the Xindi Council, but there's a group of insect people. There's an insect people. There's Hecklefisch's favorite people, which from the Y Files, if you're familiar with that, is lizard people. There's a human-looking person and a primate-looking person, ape-like person, and then there's whale people. And we see them talking amongst themselves and how the insect people want to destroy the Enterprise, and they're discussing plans on what they should do because they've been told that in 400 years from now by the builders, who are incidentally called the Guardians, but not that kind of Guardians. Um, that in 400 years, humanity is going to destroy their world, and basically they do a preemptive strike. Uh, so on the Enterprise, we see a new command center that we haven't seen before, and you have Archer, Malcolm, and T'Pol, and they it basically looks like their version of the astrometrics lab, and I'm getting better at saying that word. I've said it enough times. I think I'm getting better. Uh, and they had gotten some information from a like a trader, like a shifty trader and a freighter captain, and that would help them find this guy that could show them the way to the Xindi homeworld, or give them the location of the Xindi homeworld. So that's what they're looking for. And Malcolm doesn't like this plan. And Archer reminds him, he's like basically saying, what did this room used to be? And Malcolm says it used to be like a cargo hold or something like that, and a cargo bay, and an extra cargo bay or something. And he says that Starfleet built this, or refurbished this cargo, the refitted. Sorry, I should know that term because of the refit Enterprise. They refitted and refurbished this cargo bay to make it into this command center, and he says they did that for a reason, so that we could expedite this process of finding the Xindi, and hopefully end this thing before it goes, before it goes too far or whatever. And in the recap, Trip had said he wants Archer to basically kick ass and take names, and not he doesn't want any to use diplomacy or any the crap of non-interference that T'Pol talked about previously. So Archer basically kindly disagrees and tells Malcolm we're going to go ahead with this plan. Meanwhile, in the mess hall, let's see. Oh, Hoshi sits down with this new group of military people called Makos. I forget what it stands for, and I didn't look it up. And maybe somebody in the chat would know. But you've seen Enterprise, you know that's basically Space Marines, and they have been placed upon Enterprise, and Hoshi sits down with them to kind of talk to them, get to know them, and one of the guys starts talking to her, and she picks up that he's from Duluth, and he mentions that she must have done a lot of studying, and then the other guy, whose name is Major Hayes, who's the head of the Makos, mentions that Hoshi is a linguist, and a cunning one at that. And she'll make your life hard if you don't watch Admiral Teague's show tonight. She definitely makes something hard. Sorry, Michelle. But Michelle, you've been on Admiral Teague. You've heard the locker room talk that the guys talk about. So I don't feel too sorry, but I'll somewhat sorry. She picks up his accent, basically, his Minnesota, and then she leaves, and Trip, meanwhile, is is talking to Archer. They're walking down the corridor. Military Assault Command Operations. Thank you, Michelle. All right, yeah. I could never remember that even when the show was on back in the day. Uh, I Side tangent. I don't do well with acronyms, and the government loves acronyms. And I work in the food service industry and just had to take a test for like food safety handling and all that stuff. And there was a couple of FDA acronyms that I had to learn, and I could not retain them to save my life. But anyway, uh, and I don't know the results of the test, but I think I did okay. But and that acronym didn't even come up in the test, so they made me uh, try to remember it for no reason. Anyway, and it was multiple choice, so had that come up, I would have had four different choices, and I probably would have figured it out and remembered the acronym. But the government loves acronyms, even in the future, in a fictional science fiction show. So, um, he shows them Archer this cargo bay, and in the cargo bay and this is how I know that I've talked about this episode before because I did the motion of the cargo goes from side to side. It's stuck on one wall and then flies over to another wall. And Archer mentions that he thinks it's the deck plating or the gravity plating, and Trip is like, no, you got to see this. And so they open the door, and the cargo goes from one side of the wall to the other, and it just keeps shifting back and forth. And Archer says, is there any hazardous material? And he says, we would have known by now. So that he basically, it's just an anomaly. They don't know what's causing it, but they're in the Delphic Expanse, which is a um, part of space that they haven't been to before, and it's being manipulated by the Guardians, which they don't know that yet. But uh, spoiler for a 20-something-year-old episode. uh, so then T'Pol is visiting Phlox in sickbay, and he's inspecting some DNA fragments that they found from the sphere that blew up Florida, and he finds that it is reptilian, that they have scales, and he doesn't know if these are Xindi or not, but it sort of matches their DNA. So then, and I guess T'Pol is like helping him with, uh, some of the science part of the investigation. So then he talks to Paul about Trip and his lack he's having nightmares about his sister and stuff, and lack of sleep, and wants her to try to do pressure therapy on him, Vulcan pressure therapy, like a Vulcan massage basically, massage therapy basically, and to help him sleep. And she says that she doesn't think that he would go along with it, and Phlox says, well, he's already talked to Trip uh, about it, and he didn't seem to like the idea. But he says that it seems like the best way, because he doesn't want to over medicate him and get him addicted to the drugs or whatever, which you would think they would solve that problem by now, but maybe not. She says she agrees, but he says, "Don't go to his quarters. I'll find a way for him to go to your quarters at a certain point in time, and I'll let you know." So then the Enterprise arrives to this planet, which is a mining facility that the cargo freighter guy told them about, and it's just a shuttle pod, and it's just Archer and Malcolm. And Malcolm, and they're greeted by guards, and they tell them to follow them, and they encounter this guy who's in charge of this facility. Well, the one thing they mentioned is that the atmosphere is breathable, but there's a lot of smog and stuff. So they only have a. They should have. Malcolm says they should have worn environmental suits, and then Archer says that their away mission jackets are suitable for at least a few hours, and they're not planning on being there very long anyway. So, the guy he's all disfigured and has to wear like a breathing mask every once in a while. Um, Obvious bad guy sign, like from the Looney Tunes, like bad guy layer. That's what should have been there. But he said he's questioning why they're there, and he doesn't normally stop production or stop a work day to talk to strangers. And basically, he wants something from them in order to introduce them uh, to the Xindi guy. And Archer asks what he wants, and he says he needs liquefied platinum. And I think when I did the review that I know that I did, I said latinum, but upon rewatch, it's platinum. And Malcolm says that they can strip down parts of the antimatter relays to get him and liquefy it, and to get him what he needs. And he asks for a half a liter. And then Archer says that he needs proof that this guy's even here. So the guy reaches into a drawer and hands him a severed finger, and he says to take it back to his ship, come back tomorrow, or inspect it and come back tomorrow. So they take it back to the ship, and then we get a scene of Trip and the nightmares that he's having about his sister. And except for like he's like a little boy, and she's her normal age, and her name's Elizabeth, and he's shouting out to her to get out of the way, to leave, get out of the way. And then we see the Xindi weapon, Xindi's Death Star, firing a laser into Florida. And then we get sickbay again, and Phlox is examining the finger, and he says, a little funny line, he says they could have just sent a blood sample. And he says that it's similar DNA to the DNA that they got off of the weapon, but he's not 100% sure. And Archer asks him, "What does that mean?" He needs results. He needs information. Like, he needs to know definitively. And he says it's like akin to humans and chimps. And Archer says, "What if it's more closer to like humans and Neanderthals?" and he agrees that maybe it's something more like that. So um, so they, Archer's satisfied enough with these results, and then Trip walks in, and so Archer leaves. Trip walks in, and he says he wants something stronger to help him sleep, and Phlox tells him to come by later on, gives him like 2,200 hours or something like that, which is what, 11 o'clock. Yeah, I don't know. Not a military person. That's probably why I couldn't remember Mako's. um, but I do know that uh, if you're going to take command of a starship, you have to have command codes and authorization. Anyway, um, and often you are take those command codes from a fellow captain who transfers them to you in an official capacity, which we've seen on TNG in particular, where you say, "I relieve you, you're relieved." Anyway, so then Archer and Trip. So Trip goes back to the planet this time. Malcolm stays on board, and he's got he's been the one that has been stripping down the relays. So he has the platinum with him, and they talk to the guy, and Archer's holding on to it because he still wants to see this guy in person, and he asked them what they need it for, and I'm thinking, well, why didn't you ask that from the beginning? What if you needed it for some nefarious reason, and you were just gonna give it to him anyway? So that's kind of dumb on him. Anyway, he says they use the Trillium for insulation for of starships, mainly starships. And then he asks Archer what they use, and he says duranium. So this is, and I think we've heard Trillium D on other shows, and they never explained what it does. Kind of like a God damn it, self-sealing stem bolt, which I'm guessing in Starfleet Academy they still don't know what it's for. Uh, that's say that 5 times fast. I can't do it. Anyway, so the Xindi guy, they bring him down. The guards bring him down, and he's got his face is initially covered with a scarf. So Archer hands over the platinum and asks the guy about his home world, and the guy's like, "You came all the way out here to ask about my home world? I highly doubt that." And he says, "Before I help you, you need to help me escape." And Archer's like, "What do you mean?" He says, "Take a look around. These people aren't willfully here. They're slave workers." And Archer starts to leave, and the door is locked, and he realizes that he's trapped down there with him and Trip are trapped down there with him. And so he calls Enterprise. T'Pol answers and says that there are three warships approaching. And then he closes the communicator. Actually, I think got that other way around. He calls Enterprise first. She says there's 3 warships approaching. He starts to leave. Then he realizes they're trapped. tries to call back, and no response. And then the guy, the mangled guy with the face mask, wannabe Darth Vader, um, hails Enterprise, and T'Pol and answers and he says that they are deionizing the landing decks, and that there's going to be problems with communications, and that Archer's going to be delayed in returning. So, um, so basically, Archer agrees to help that guy escape, because they have to escape anyway, and reach the shuttle pod. Uh, so they're like in the sewers, and uh, they're in the sewers, and they trying to reach this. They're trying to reach this maintenance hatch, and they have to climb up to the top, to the surface. And there's like I think he says that every so many decks there's a maintenance hatch that they can go into. And then T'Pol goes to Malcolm and tells Malcolm to work with Hayes and come up with a rescue plan for Archer and Trip. Uh, so then, as they're climbing up through to reach the surface, uh, the Xindi guy is saying, like, "Have you ever seen any other Xindi? Have you been to their whole? Well, it doesn't say have. He says, have you ever seen any other Xindi?" And he says, "No, just you and one other." Uh, and he explains that there's 5 different distinct species. So there's the insectoids, the humanoids, the aquatics, the lizard people, and the primates. Of course, later on we find out that there's also bird people, the avians. And so T'Pol, Malcolm and Hayes are working on this plan, and T'Pol comes into the room, and basically Malcolm says that Hayes wants Malcolm's crew to stay on the ship, and Hayes says that they should go down to the surface because Malcolm's crew is more familiar with Enterprise, and that so if there's in case there's a boarding party, they would be able to take care of that problem. And he says that Malcolm can't be sure that they would make it back on time. And T'Pol agrees with this plan, but defers to Malcolm because Malcolm's in charge. And they basically agree to. Malcolm's going to go with them. And then he says Hayes leaves the room, and Malcolm basically says it's like a pissing contest. Doesn't say that, but he basically wants to be in charge of the mission. That he's seen military people all his life, and they're always kind of like that. So then the Enterprise launches a shuttle, and Mayweather, or as Admiral T calls him, Pride Weather, I call him Gay Weather, is piloting the shuttle. Then you have Malcolm, and then the Mako's in the back. And so as the As Trip and the Xindi guy and Archer are climbing up, they hear these noises. And the Xindi guy says that they must be rerouting plasma through this shaft that they're climbing up, and that they need to hurry and get to another maintenance hatch. And Archer says, "Well, we're the closest one. We just passed one. Why don't we go back down?" And uh, the Xindi guy wants to keep going up, but they don't have much time. So Archer says, "We're going back down," and so he's basically forced to go with his plan. And they get into the maintenance hatch, and there's guards waiting there for them. But before that, Tucker is about to kick his ass because he tried to like skip over him and basically push them out of the way. Then the Xindi guy, says lies to the guards and says they forced me to come with him, and basically groveling. Uh, Archer, and then the main villain guy says that he was hoping to keep them for work as a workforce, but they're more trouble than they're worth. And he tells the guards to take them up to the surface and execute them. But right as that happens, the Makos show up. There's a big shootout. There's a hand-to-hand combat with the female one, which I forget her name, but she was pretty hot, and she comes into play later on when Hayes dies. Again, spoiler. Um, he says that uh, she should take over his spot, and then not now in that later episode, but in so then there's a big shootout. They Reed shows up. They rescue Trip and Archer. And Archer's about to leave the Xindi guy behind, and he's like, why should I take you after that stump you pulled back there? And he says, no, I can tell you where the Xindi homeworld is. I swear. So they take him with him. There's more shootouts on the surface, and he gets shot. And they take him into the shuttle and fly away. And they get back to the Enterprise. And then there's a log where Archer says that the warships were following them for a few hours, but they eventually couldn't keep up with the Enterprise and had to fall back. Then Phlox comes into Archer's quarters. I don't know if it's the quarters or his ready room. I think maybe it's his ready room, and says that the guy, he couldn't save the guy, but in his dying words, he gave me this and says you would know what to do with it, and it's the coordinates for the Xindi homeworld. Meanwhile, Trip visits Phlox, and at the time, where he was supposed to have an appointment, and Phlox tells him that or gives him his pill, his medicine, but it turns out to be a placebo. And then he gives Trip some bioscans that to give to Paul. So he goes to Paul's quarters, where she's wearing a robe, and he says, "I'm sorry for arriving so late at night." So I guess it is around 11. And she's in a robe, a nice silk robe, and she tells Trip to sit down and offers tea. He says, "No, the tea will probably keep me up." And besides, the doctor gave me this medication that should be kicking in pretty soon. And she reveals that she's also having trouble sleeping. Something about the expanse is messing with like her cycle. uh, Not that kind of cycle. And I think her meditation, I think, is what she said. You would think the second time around doing this episode, I would have remembered that. But anyway, so she takes off her robe and asks him to to help with the massage stuff. And so she and then takes off her shirt and covers her boobs. And so we get a little bit of side boob, I guess. And she tells him where to press and press harder, and that it's not going to hurt her. It's making her feel better. And then tells him that she says it would only be fair if I were to return the favor. And he says no, and he kind of smiles and says that any other situation he would love it. And then she kind of accuses him of. She says, "Are you implying that I'm making sexual advances?" And he says, "No." And she tells him about the placebo, and he says, "Why didn't the doctor just ask me in the first place?" And she says that he did. And I'm going to have to put on my glasses for this one. She calls him intransigent and proceeds to explain that it means unwilling to compromise. And he says that he knows what it means. I didn't know that word, so that's a new word for me, which is why I had to put on my glasses. And Trip gets defensive and says that he's always willing to compromise, which is not true. And he's not going to compromise with the Xindi. We've already seen that. And so then T'Pol says, "Well, then sit down and take off your shirt." And so then she does the procedure to him. Then on board, on the bridge, presumably the next day, because T'Pol is on the bridge and wearing a different uniform, which I'm going to talk about. They arrive at what it looks to be like a big, giant debris field of like rocks and stuff floating out. And T'Pol says that it appears that it was a planet at some point, but it was destroyed about 120 years ago. And then Trip says that there's metal fragments that correspond with the Xindi weapon, indicating that it was at some point the Xindi planet. And then they detect some spatial distortions, and Archer says to Mayweather to, let's keep going. Let's go further into the expanse because there's nothing here for them. And then we see the Xindi Council again, and they're discussing stuff again, and the insectoids are running out of patience. They want the weapon finished quickly because the weapon that fired on Florida was just a test weapon. So they're building a second Death Star. And then that's sort of and one of the guys who we find out later is Dagra, says that it would be wiser to just remain. They don't know that they're here, and it would be wiser to just remain hidden. So they're in a hidden part of space that the Enterprise cannot detect, but that's why they detected the spatial distortions, and that's basically where it is. I would say it was a above average, 5.5 out of 10, just because it's the beginning of the Xindi arc. It's giving us information, and it's setting us up for what becomes the war. But we are revealed, we are given, told that there are 5 different species, but they're all Xindi. So they all have a common ancestor, and that there's some good action bits in it. This is the beginning of T'Pol and Trip's, eventual relationship, and and I liked. Speaking of T'Pol's uniform, this is a much better uniform than the one she had before. It's just a blue, tight, cat suit, but it looks better. It just looks better than that brown camouflage looking one, or whatever that was. We see a later one that's blue, that I think she has like the Enterprising patch on it or something, which I like a lot, and then she also has a purple cat suit, which looks so much better than that god awful brown. So they keep flip flopping back and forth with her uniforms, but it beats the god awful brown one. All right, so let's see what people have been saying. So DJ Play Nice says to give the thumbs up and like and share the stream. Yes, please do that if you can. Anybody that's kind of lurking, if you're out there, do that. You can even do it later. If you catch this later in the future, you can do that. There's no limit, as far as I know, to a time limit on when you can give the likes. Live only DJ Play Nice live only happens once. Take advantage, man. Take advantage. Recorded in your little Trek book. Yes, we're gonna write this one down and make sure it stays in the playlist, because I do not want to have to do this again. But I didn't want to go on to the random generator thing website and do it without the audience's presence, so that that I'm not cheating or whatever. So I decided to just do it again, and then we'll do the randomized live. Michelle Fairy Tales says, I hope you're all having a great day. I definitely am having a great day, because I'm not at work. Although I'm getting a lot of, I'm getting a lot of news about how much taxes I owe and all this crap, which is what you're hearing, the ding sound. When I shouldn't be owing taxes, I don't make enough, but whatever. Well, I'm not even gonna get into that. Makos, we got that. Any relationship with Bakos? I hate that love song. I don't know what that song is, DJ Play Nice. I have never heard of that song. Gavin Blackburn says Mary Mayweather gets a scene. Yay! Yeah, I mean, I think towards the fourth season he gets a little better, but he's not much better than these actors on Starfleet Academy. The guy that plays uh, Jaden, or as I say, Gaden. So the one intentionally gay character and the one we just call gay, they both suck. They're both black. That has nothing to do with it, but and DJ Play Nice says he is agreeing. I'm assuming you're agreeing with T'Pol's uniform change. Michelle Fairytale says, I didn't hate this episode, and I thought that the Makos were an interesting addition to the story. Yes, and him and uh, Malcolm and Hayes often butt heads, but towards the end, uh, they see eye to eye, and there is there's character development, something that's lacking in new Star Trek, especially Starfleet Academy series. So, again, this one went longer than expected, but I did shove in a little bit of a Starfleet Academy rant. And we got 3 more episodes to go. So 7 episodes in, and we still haven't had a science fiction episode in a science fiction show. It's been everything but science fiction. So let's get to the random episode generator. And as you can see, still on Enterprise, Xindi. If it comes up again, I'm skipping over it. It's Voyager, Season 7, Episode 4, Repression. Let me double check that I haven't done that one. This is my little Star Trek book that DJ Play Nice was talking about. These are all the Voyager episodes that I've done. Voyager. What did we say? 7, 4? We got 7-Eleven. It should have been about Slurpees. Every season 7-Eleven should be about Slurpees, no matter what show it is. No, I have not done Repression. And I do not know what episode that is. Could it be Repression of Memories? Like something that, like 709 was repressing memories of like her Borg days, or could it be B'Elanna? Don't remember. All right. So with that being said, we're definitely an hour long review. We try to keep them shorter, but sometimes as a famous Ghostbuster said, shit happens, and who are you gonna call? So, as I say goodbye, I say, remember rule of accusation number 502. Greed is good, but is also dangerous. Proceed with caution.